Hello, Internet. I'm sorry. That's shit. I got 3 words in.
Hello, Internet.
I went and I'm Sounds of Stadia. That's where my brain went.
I mean, you're a third of Sounds of Stadia.
That's true. Hello, Internet. I'm Richie, and welcome to Sounds of Stadia SideQuest, the show where we take a step off the critical path and explore more of what the gaming world has to offer. On this show, I'm not joined by the techie teacher because he was busy; he couldn't make it today. But I am joined by the monster boy himself and the host of Sounds of Stadia podcast, Mr. Chris. How are you?
I still hate yellow anoraks.
Yes, he does. He absolutely despises them. And this week we're going to be bringing something a bit different. Because Chris and I have both finished Assassin's Creed Valhalla, we decided let's do a spoiler cast. So we're going to be talking all about Assassin's Creed Valhalla. If you haven't played and you don't want anything spoiled with you, bookmark this show and come back to it when you're finished, because it's spoiler warnings from this point onwards. But before we get into that, brief bit of housekeeping. Make sure you like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. You can get this show a whole week early. About a week early. Or if you're a member on Patreon.
A working week.
Yeah, it's a working week.
Working week early.
It comes up for Friday for most people, and it comes up as soon as I'm finished editing, usually on the Sunday evening for patrons. Don't forget to watch the Sound of Stadia podcast, which is up every Monday on podcast services and YouTube, and also maybe check out our Thursday night live stream. And last week, actually, we brought you something a bit extra with Chris's reference to Yellow Anoraks. We did a whole 6-hour-long full playthrough of Little Nightmares 2. But enough of that.
It was crazy fun.
It was. Enough of that. Let's get into the actual spoiler cast. So, should we start with a brief summary of the plot of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, just to spoil the entire game nice and early?
Yeah, so I think to be clear as well, as we've played, so I finished the game in its entirety.
Yeah.
So that's every stone uncovered, every mystery solved. That's not including DLC. That's not at the time of recording. That's not out yet. So the Druids and the invasion of Paris, that's not happened.
Yeah.
Richie, how much would you say?
I finished most of the game. I rolled credits on it. I finished every main story arc. I didn't finish all of the ancient ones, and I didn't finish all the kind of all the side quests and all the collectible stuff. But
side quests.
When you already landed over 100 hours in the game, I was ready. I had Cyberpunk sat there waiting, beckoning me. So
what was your final playtime then?
I think it was about 110 hours, roughly thereabouts.
Yeah, mine was about 126.
Yeah,
just short of 127 maybe.
I did do a lot. It was kind of once I hit the 70-hour mark, and I had about 3 or 4 main story arcs left to go, that I kind of thought I want to speed this up, because my plan was, because I played this back in December. Mm-hmm. My plan was I wanted to play Cyberpunk when I broke up for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
So while I was off for a week or two, so I wanted to have Assassin's Creed Valhalla wrapped up for then.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I suppose for the viewers out there who've probably played, I'd imagine if you're listening to this, you probably played Assassin's Creed to some degree. Yeah. It's obviously the third entry in the kind of reboot trilogy almost. We've had Origins, we've had Odyssey, and now Valhalla is taking kind of all elements from those different games, but it follows a similar premise where big open world, mysteries and such to solve, storylines. But what I did appreciate with this one is the way the stories were kind of broken up into individual arches based on regions. But yeah, you're right, Rich. I think we'll start with the initial beginning of the plot, and then we'll branch out from there.
Yeah, so you start off as a young Eivor, the child of a Jarl. You can actually be a male or female character, which interestingly, Chris picked one, I picked the other. So that was quite useful when we were talking about this before recording. Personally, I went female, you went male. And during a feast, because who doesn't love a feast, you're attacked by a rival clan who, battle.
Typical.
Chaos ensues, battle, blah, blah, blah. Your dad gets killed, but it's a bit more of it was kind of begging for the survival of his clan, which was considered quite shameful.
Yeah, it's weird. Obviously, the culture is very different, but you're totally right there. Yeah, his father's basically held that axe point and says, if you just sacrifice yourself, I'll let everyone else live. and he ends up killing him. Your mum runs to his aid in despair. She ends up getting an axe in her back, and you, as a young child, just has to watch on as everyone in your clan gets basically murdered alive.
Not a good end to
Shocking.
a face.
I've seen better.
But you do get away with the help of a gentleman called Sigurd, who you're eventually brought up. Fast forward, you've been brought up alongside his family, who was actually the Jarl of your area, and his dad was actually the king, wasn't he? Was the king? That region, was the main guy in that region. So Sigurd, it's like very much brother or brother sister relationship, very very strong bond there. But when you rejoin as older. Oh, we should mention actually you get attacked by a wolf when you're as a child and get scarred all down your neck and gain the moniker of Wolf-Kissed.
Yeah, they're quite big on like symbolism and obviously due to the nature of like the Norse gods, they all worship like animals and certain things like obviously Thor and Odin and stuff and the ravens. It's all very symbolic of their culture at the time. But they join a clan, the Raven clan. It would just happen to be. And that time Norway is about to be unified under one King Harold, and that kind of systematically is what pushes you towards England instead.
Yeah, so the way it plays out is Sigurd returns from being overseas, but wasn't his conquest, finds out his father intended to bend the knee to King Harold instead of retaining their independence. Sigurd wasn't best pleased with that and decides for him and Eivor and whoever would follow them to leave and depart and set up a new settlement in the shores of England. So they land in England and set up Ravensfall. But before you set over at another feast, because we like feasts in this game,
who doesn't?
You do meet two interesting characters, Bassam and Hytham, who appear very much to be assassins.
Yeah, this was the first time. So we should probably say at this point you've been able to explore Norway.
Yeah.
Obviously, ice cold lands, the northern lights in the sky. Very beautiful. It sets the scene for like how gorgeous this game is going to be. Climbing snowy peaks, and it kind of introduces you to the new systems of exploring mysteries, finding artifacts, and how it's a tutorial zone essentially.
It's your classic tutorial zone.
It shows you how your like kind of homestead works, and you can do drinking competitions, and you can get tattoos, and you customize your beard and such. So they're very, again, introducing kind of early game mechanics. And then, like you said, Richie, you head out for England. You land in the Midlands somewhere. You found Ravensthorpe, which is a real place in the UK, not the one in the game, but that does actually exist. And you meet Bassam and Hytham, who, as soon as I saw them, they're very much in that classic Assassin's Creed white garb with the red trim, and they've got the pointy hoods, and you think these guys are up to something. They came with Sigurd back from like their Italian adventures through Rome and the Vatican, and there's obviously that influence of Templars already tinged in assassins within this, and like
it feels
that's when the story starts to unravel a little bit.
I haven't played Origins, but I have played Odyssey, but it feels like this is still precursor to what then would be referred to as the Order of Assassins, because they refer to themselves as the Hidden Ones.
Essentially, spoilers for Origins.
But where the way they are dressed very much is reminiscent of like Ezio or Altair. So I think at this point very close to them, if not already been the Order of Assassins. And the Templars, the precursor of the Templars are the Order of the Ancients in this game.
So similar to Odyssey and Origins, where within the main campaign there is also side missions of go hunt these individuals down. They're all part of a wider cult or an organization that essentially want to bring everybody under the banner of the Order of the Ancients or the Templars from previous games, where they want everyone to adhere to their rules and to their way of thinking and their way of living, and that's the kind of Templar way. And the Assassins have always been there to counteract that, and they're all about freedom and liberty and all those kind of things. And that's been echoed through the entire franchise to date.
Yeah. But anyway, you land
on two creepy bastards, basically, and you don't know whether you trust them or not at this stage.
Did you trust them when you first initially?
Not initially, because I didn't know whether they were Templars. So having played previous Assassin's Creed games, I've came to learn that just because they say they're one or the other, you never know. And with them coming from Italy, I don't know what their agenda is in Norway. I don't know what their agenda is in England. So I was a bit.
That was it. I didn't fully trust them, but I felt like the game wanted me to trust them, especially with their dressed in assassin's garb. I remember actually walking through the hall and I thought, oh, this guy, like, he looks like an assassin. Then almost immediately reveals himself to be an assassin.
Yeah.
Hidden blades and all.
Pretty much.
The hidden blade makes its return.
That quite early makes its return,
which was nice.
It's interesting again how they do these games, because they've been kind of complained about for not having the Assassin's Creed story really in them. You're not really an assassin. You are kind of playing as, like, in this case, a Viking. The last time you were like a Greek Mystios, and then Origins you were one of the Magi. And it's kind of like, when are we going to play as an assassin again? But it's an interesting way to reintroduce them to the story.
It's quite an interesting way, I found, of like, because while you're not at like the Ezio level of Assassin's Orders, like being that well established, they still seem to be like setting up, and although they've been around for a long time, things like this, like every game seems to be taking you a bit one more step closer to like the Assassin's Order as it was. So in this game, bringing back the wrist blade is definitely another step in that direction. It's like, while also maintaining the new style of Assassin's Creed, where it is more RPG mechanics, you have a bit more choice in how you tackle things. So stealth is one of basically 3 main ways to tackle it. Like, you can go range, melee, or stealth.
And we know Vikings were never going to be stealthy, because they're all about power and brute force and hack and slash. Yeah. So it was great. It was optional, and for the Assassin's Creed lovers out there, it had to be included. Yeah. But we mentioned that when you arrive in England and Hytham and Basim are showing up, it goes a long way to the wider world of the state of England at that time, because they reference quite a lot throughout the gameplay that the Templars and Assassins did exist within England already as part of the Roman Empire expanding through Europe back in the time. And they obviously lost their foothold when all the Scottish clans and the Irish clans and everyone basically fought back, and Rome basically went back into just being in Italy. And the Roman Empire collapsed, essentially. And you, throughout the game, you pick up remnants of the Assassin's Order and the Templars, essentially. Yeah. The remnants of what were left.
What's interesting is Basim and Hytham's mission is basically to re-establish the hidden ones in Britain after the Order was previously collapsed there. However, the Templar Order is still going strong. So they want to regain a foothold, and that acts as a big driving force of the narrative, actually. In a lot of ways, like, some of the major antagonists are affiliated with the Order of the Ancients.
Yeah, they all come from that kind of evil side of the coin. And I guess once you set up in Ravensthorpe, and it teaches you the mechanics of how to upgrade your stronghold. So throwback to Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood, where you get to build up your own area with like your local shop, your blacksmith, your stables and everything like that. You build them up by going out and collecting. And I think we can both agree the region is then broken up into maps. And I think this was what made this different to Odyssey and Origins, where each region had its own story arc, which felt, for me as a player, jumping in and finishing a story arc felt like a nice chapter of a story to kind of put the game. I wasn't powering through a massive open world game. It felt like it was broken up into loads of smaller sequential parts. Yeah. It was more digestible in a way.
One of the things I have against Odyssey is it always felt a bit too open. There's huge sections of the Odyssey map that you won't even go anywhere near of in the main story, where in Valhalla the main story is tied to what is called the Alliance map, where every single region has one or maybe sometimes 2 major story arcs that really progresses the plot of that thing. And then you're going to these areas anyway, and then you have all your side quests in and around the major settlements and in the wilderness. So it was a nice way of segmenting it, so it didn't feel...
And it was nice returning to Ravensthorpe and seeing how everyone had upgraded, and you saw familiar characters around the village, essentially. And then, you go to the Alliance map and say, Yorkshire, Shropshire, Kent, London, I would like to go create an alliance for my clan, trying to find a foothold in this country. And once you reach that area, there's a whole storyline specific for that region.
Yeah,
and,
so that's it.
We met loads of characters.
So when you arrive there, so basically you're the new guys in town. Basically everyone is basically an enemy. So Eivor is tasked by Sigurd, the new Jarl of Ravensthorpe, to effectively help acquire alliances. So you end up going your separate ways for quite a long stretch, while you're going to develop these alliances, which actually creates some interesting tension with a few characters. There's a couple of characters, Dag in particular, who accuses you of basically trying to usurp Sigurd.
Yeah, he's a bit of an asshole, to be fair.
It's like,
he's obviously that's his character,
The amount of times I want to just turn around and go and was like, I'm literally doing what our Jarl has asked me to do. He said, go get alliances. I'm getting alliances. But
yeah, there's a few times when you return to Ravensthorpe and you have to make decisions based on like two people in the village are quarreling over something, or a decision needs to be made. And the game just gives you that option. Do you want to do A or B? And it's whichever you choose, he basically rocks up and says, why are you making that decision? You're not our leader. That's Sigurd. You don't deserve to sit in his seat. And you're kind of just like, dude, I'm just looking after the place while he's busy on his other errands with Basim, who's corrupting him the entire time he's away. Yeah. And you just in my face. The amount of times I wanted to just hit him with my axe.
It's like, quite literally, there's a problem happening. Sigurd's wife has asked me to set in as Sigurd's basically brother or sister, but like Dag very much accuses you of basically trying to usurp him, and it comes to a head actually at one point.
It does.
I don't know.
Might as well cover it now while he's here. Did you or did you not kill him?
I killed him.
I killed him as well.
I felt it was the honourable way to handle that. Within the way my Eivor had been playing, that felt like almost the respectful way of dealing with him.
Well, once he addresses it and says, right, we're having a fight, and you say, no, we're not doing this, and he pushes you to a point where your only option is to fight him. Yeah. And then, naturally you win the fight. I
tried to talk him out of it, but when it was clear that this is going to happen. But I think
he made his decision up.
I think you have a choice. Do you get the choice, don't you? After you've won the fight, whether you kill him or spare him.
There's like a final blow.
Yeah, I ultimately killed him because I felt that was the more honourable thing. It's like, as much of a bit of a dick he is, I always felt that he wanted what was best for the clan. He never seemed to be out of self. He wasn't like trying to put himself in a better position. He felt he was fighting for the clan, and
he was very disillusioned, but his interests were honourable from his point of view.
So that's why I give him an honourable death.
Yeah, I give him the axe and I sent him off to Valhalla.
Yeah.
But that was one of the many characters we meet. Obviously, you mentioned there Randvi, who, of course, is your essentially your Sigurd's your stepbrother, I guess, in this scenario. Yeah. That's his wife, and she comes a bit disillusioned with Sigurd as he wanders off with Basim and he seeks a higher purpose. It's
not Sigurd's your stepbrother, it's more like you've been adopted into his family.
Yeah.
Where Ramvi is Ramvi. That's not stepbrother. Stepbrother is usually by marriage, isn't it?
No.
Anyway, Ramvi Sigurd's wife, but it was a political marriage. Rather
it was one of those classic married through power and
and it was one of them. It didn't seem like there was any bad blood between them, but she had eyes for someone else.
She did. She had eyes for either female Eivor, I take it in your case.
Yeah.
So Randvi likes the other, same sex. And in my world, she just has eyes for Eivor, whichever incarnation there is. And I suppose that's one of the characters. She's in charge of the alliance map. She dishes out the missions and the regions to go to. Yeah. And throughout these missions, you get to a bit of flirting every time you're coming back with all these conquests, these lands covered. And did you make a play for Randvi, Richie?
I didn't. She made a play for me, but it was fairly early in the game where this kind of happened. It was like my Eivor was very much loyal to Sigurd and felt like it's something that even if she wanted to, that she wouldn't step over that line with Randvi. So I didn't go ahead with it. I did sleep with the Huntress in the village though.
The Huntress. I don't think I did enough storylines with that particular individual, but Randvi, I made the leap. Well, when she was coming on to me, I was like, let's just go. We just got on with it in a high tower somewhere in a random broken down dilapidated castle. And then every time I then return to the region map, it gives the option to kiss her, make a move, and every single time he goes, should we take this to our chambers? And she goes, what's wrong with right here on the map table, essentially.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, anyone can walk in at any time, so considering it's in the main hall of the main building.
And it's your Jarl's wife.
And in his bed, and in his bedroom's next door as well. But either way.
See, that would have been was anything come up with Dag in that? Because it feels
Dag
like
that never crossed over the Dag storyline. It did cross over to Sigurd's storyline near the end, where basically he calls you out on it, but he doesn't actually blame you for it. Yeah, he basically just accepts it and says, "Look, me and Randvi never really got on. You're clearly better matched." Obviously, it's a shitty thing to do, which he apologized. Eivor apologizes for it, but nothing really comes of it. To be fair, surprisingly.
See, for me, the conclusion of Sigurd's storyline, Randvi and him do split anyway. Which is quite
doesn't
interesting.
Make it any better though.
Yeah, it doesn't. Basically, as a kind of either way, them two are not destined to be together. But I was just wondering, that would have been such a good way of fueling Dag as well if he encountered you.
Yeah, he found you and he was like, "What are you now? You're trying to take control now." His wife and now,
you've been claiming that you're doing it all for Sigurd, you're doing it for the clan, and yet I find you basically besmirching Sigurd's honor by nailing his wife on the very alliance table
that I was told to look after. So I suppose other characters. This is the weird thing with the game. We said because you can branch out into any region. Obviously, they're different power levels. So it does control the narrative, and to some degree.
Some regions only unlock once you've completed others as well.
Right.
Yeah, you can't just go any region in any order.
Straight to one. Yeah. I wanted to go straight to York personally because I've been there many, many times, and York's obviously too high a level to just get involved with. But I kind of guess some of the characters that we picked out specifically. There was the story arc with Cheerwolf, who was kind of the first one I was leaning towards. I think that's where the story pushes you. Yeah. Which is over in I want to say Norwich area, the East Coast essentially, Lincolnshire, Norwich, that kind of direction. And you meet Cheerwolf, you kind of help him be instilled as a leader in that region, you fight off some enemies, you kill some villainous leaders, and then eventually you want to help his son also be in a position of power, and he kind of becomes your ward on your adventures, and you have to go out there and kind of teach him the ropes of leadership and war, because the poor kid's never actually been in a fight before. And subsequently you meet Ivar, who's another Viking who's been in the country for a while, and you meet a couple of other people, but for me, Ivar was the biggest guy stand out because he's just an absolute prick. Yeah, he's got the most personality of some of the characters you meet. You meet his brother Halfdan as well at the same time as you meet Ivar, but Ivar, you first meet him while he's literally torturing someone. Yeah, he's splitting their spine up and do what they refer to as a blood eagle, which I've never heard of. But it's they crucify them and peel down the back and rip their skin apart, and they open their lungs out from the back. So it's like a bloody. It's very sick. It's the old way stuff. So in terms of first impressions, you're like, oh, this guy's a bit brutal. It's implied in the game at this point in time that's a practice that had pretty much died out, and he was one of the few practitioners of it still. Yeah, he's an absolute creep. He's very much just thrives on war and bloodlust and fighting, essentially. Yeah, it was interesting because Ivar and Halfdan are two of your biggest allies, and especially if it's when you go to meet Sigurd after your first area away that you go meet up with Sigurd, and that's when you get introduced to them. It's you meet Ivar first, and this guy's a horrible guy. Yeah, and he's on our team. Yeah, and it's oh no, we have to be friends with this guy. I don't like this guy. It's so it gives an interesting tension there. But yeah, it does create an interesting dynamic within that. Especially because who else? Yeah, Soma. That's another character we meet. Yeah. Quite early on, I think, where you basically help her retake her own kind of region. And then again, I suppose the part we should say about the regions is this is obviously every region you defeat, the leaders of that region then become your allies. So as the story progresses, they kind of all come to fruition at the end of the story where they're all on your team in the big kind of the big climax of the game in essence.
Interesting time. Let's go down the Ivar path a bit further, because I think he's one of the ones who has the most memorable story arcs through, because it's done over the course of a couple of regions. Because Chirbert, like your ward, ends up like spending a lot of time with Ivar. So Ivar's kind of the one helping him like become more of a warrior, sort of thing. And well, after a battle, it's actually. You was just before a battle. You're camped out somewhere, and I think you're about to lay a city to siege, and Ivar actually ultimately he murders Chirbert in order to ensure that it goes down to battle. He tries to frame the enemy.
It's a political move, isn't it? Like you're in a scenario where again Chirbert it doesn't have a clue what he's really doing. He's like a well-spoken, well-mannered young lad who's just going to inherit
good intentions, a bit naive, but generally nice guy.
Yeah. And he's entrusted to Ivar, and Ivar, like we said, is bloodlusty. And you're about to have a fight with another region. It was like the Dragon King. It might have been the Wales storyline, plus the Welsh side. And essentially, it ends up being resolved without any blood. And you're all happy with it, and all parties involved are happy with just like sharing a bit of the wealth, and everyone's cool. Yeah. Ivar doesn't like this. He wants war. He hates the guy who's the opposition. He hates him for like a previous battle they had, and he scarred him. So he wants revenge, essentially. And his path to revenge ends up killing Chirbert to instill the war.
I took it as more than he just wants revenge. I took it as he is just bloodlusty. He wants a battle, and this is an opportunity as well to get revenge.
Yeah, so he basically kills Chirbert, who he was supposed to be looking after.
Yeah,
in tricks
they
you
went
and
for
your
a
clan
celebratory hunt, and then Chirbert doesn't come back, and you find his body. And then ultimately, after you get convinced to battle the Dragon Kings, you win ultimately.
You do take the land by force, and then Ivar reveals that he's the bastard who killed the poor lad.
Yeah,
which means you've just killed yet another entire region in a total false lie. Built on a lie, which then makes you hate Ivar even more. And obviously, we have to put him to bed.
So now, how did you resolve it?
I turned him into a Blood Eagle, I think.
Oh, you actually went full Blood Eagle?
Yeah. I didn't give him the honor of Valhalla. I kicked away his axe and then turned him into a Blood Eagle.
That's the thing. Like, you get this after you beat him, you have a choice. Do you like? I think you can spare him, Blood Eagle him, give him his axe and send him to Valhalla, or I think I just killed him. I don't think I Blood Eagled him. I think
I totally Blood Eagled him. That's what I would have wanted.
I just didn't feel he deserved like an honourable death. No. Like because of his actions. That's
like the biggest insult. Someone who thrives on war and expecting to go to Valhalla as a warrior, taking away his axe at the end is that kind of final insult of like, no, I'm not giving you this.
I mean, I'm not huge on Norse mythology. It'd be nice to have Tom actually, because he is. But I'm guessing if you're just like you don't die holding your weapon. Yeah, you haven't died a warrior's death, so you're not permitted to Valhalla. But speaking of Valhalla, we do go to Asgard.
We do. This is a totally separate storyline within the storyline, the main human storyline. There's two others. One, of course, which is, you take some magic potion and you trip out, and in your dreams, you are Odin embodied, and you go and see Asgard fully realized, just like Odyssey before it, where you get to see Atlantis and Olympus. And obviously Hell this time round, you get to see Valhalla and Jotunheim fully realized with frost giants and all the gods that you recognize from the Marvel movies and Norse mythology. Thor, Odin, Tyr, Freya, they're all rocking up in the high heavens.
Loki,
of course.
Loki's very important. That's see. Now we discovered something interesting because I played as female Eivor, you played as male. Mm-hmm. When you go to Asgard, you take over. You're not playing as Eivor, you're playing as Odin. So obviously Odin's male, so I was playing as a male character. Which actually has
you never met at this point.
Yeah, I never met. Yeah, you played as a male Odin and male Eivor. Yeah. Which meant that you could tell that they actually had the same voice actor.
Immediately. So Eivor playing as the male character, when you go into the dream and you relive through Odin.
Yeah.
Odin is Eivor. It's the same guy essentially. So you are Odin in that world. Whereas obviously you wouldn't have seen that because you were playing as a woman.
Yeah.
And then when you go, Odin is obviously Norse mythology. He's a man. He's the All Father. You can't be the All Father if you're a woman, unfortunately. So immediately I was like, oh, that's just Eivor. And then when I meet Loki, that's obviously Sigurd. And when you meet all the other characters, they're just the characters from the Valhalla storyline, but as gods.
But we should say, actually, to get to Asgard, you have to take some weird witch's potion to get there. So
you're tripping out.
So there's a couple of key characters in the Asgard storyline that share voice actors with the main Valhalla storyline. Yeah. So I initially thought that, it's just like you're dreaming, you have like hallucinations, and you're just kind of projecting your characters onto on the people onto these characters. But actually, it turns out it's something a bit deeper, because going back to Sigurd, actually, before we continue that, Sigurd does get captured by the Order of the Ancients. And gets tortured into believing he is a god reincarnate.
Yeah, he's very much had his mind warped into thinking he's from a long bloodline, and he's such a higher up power that he is in fact a god.
So actually, once you reclaim him, because that's it's a big part of the story actually, in trying to get him back and chasing all the ancients. But when you get back, he's a very much a different person completely. And he's openly talking about the fact that he's a god and he's kind of above just like Ravensthorpe and everything.
Yeah, he's kind of over it, isn't he? By the time Ravensthorpe reaches a decent size, Sigurd's like, do what you want. I think that's why I wasn't bothered at the end with Randvi as well, with my relationship with her, because he sees himself as he's a god. He doesn't need to worry himself with the mortals on why can't I think of what Earth's called?
Midgard.
Midgard, that's the one, Midgard. And the kind of the God storyline, I know Assassin's Creed's been critiqued for not being as Assassin's Creedy, but for me personally, who loves Greek, Egyptian, Norse mythology, this is fantastic for me, because you essentially now play out stories from Norse mythology with Odin and how he loses his eye, ravens, the wolf that essentially brings upon Ragnarok. You get to play through all that as a storyline within Asgard and Jotunheim.
Well, that's it. So Tyr, because during the Asgard storyline, Asgard gets invaded by the ice giants of Jotunheim. You find a wolf. Odin hates wolves, so decides to chain them up, lock them down, gives it custody over to Tyr. Ultimately, you find out the wolf is Fenrir, the son of Loki.
Yep.
Loki, again, like in them for Ragnarok, you believed he was your brother. You believed he was a nice guy until he betrayed you. Actually, it's more that you betrayed him, though, actually.
It's a bit of a weird one, because obviously Odin's tied to the prophecy of the sages who basically tell him that Ragnarok and Asgard and all your people are going to die. And if this wolf, because essentially in Norse mythology, it's the wolf chases the sun and moon, and when the sun and moon are eaten, that becomes Ragnarok, and everything gets killed. And you've seen probably Thor Ragnarok. Yeah. It kind of follows it loosely. You've got Hela, who's obviously not involved in this storyline. But the giant wolf, which is what Hulk fights at the end, that is, Loki's son. And obviously Odin hates wolves because they're going to bring about his doom, which then ties itself into Eivor. He's the wolf kiss because he was attacked by a wolf as a child. And then that progresses to, then we realise, Richie, that it's all tied together. And actually, Sigurd is in fact...
The moment for me was, because when Sigurd's under the capture of the Order of the Ancient, he actually loses his arm. It's the moment where you've just fought Fenrir, and Fenrir's got Tyr by the arm, and you make a promise to like Loki and Fenrir, but then immediately betray them, and Fenrir just rips his arm clean off. That's the moment where I went,
Odin's a dick.
Yeah. Well, no, it's more that these characters are so interlinked, and it's the moment where I actually figured out who Loki is.
Right, it mirrors
once
everyone.
I made that connection, it's like, actually, the current time, the people and the Asgard people are mirrors of each other.
Yeah, they're treading the same path, just in a different form, essentially. But it's kind of prophecy just repeats itself.
But that goes back to Sigurd believing he's a god, because through his torture and under the custody of the Order of the Ancients, he starts seeing things, seeing parts of his former self, parts of Tyr's life. And we're getting close. the end now, where you sail back to Norway to find what is it you went looking for?
So the kind of third overarching storyline of all of this is the animus stuff that we see in modern day world that Assassin's Creed games have had from day one. That we're in present day time and we're able to relive ancient history through the DNA, the blood of our ancestors.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happens in Valhalla. It's Layla Hussein who's in modern day times, and she finds Eivor's body. Then she goes into Eivor's memory, and that's how she relives this. And then all the strings are pulled together in the kind of climax crescendo of the story, where the ancient ones, who are essentially where all the storyline comes from, the Asgardians and the gods of old, they did exist. These were real people, and the Animus was a machine created by them to read memories and live on through memories and DNA. And then that transcends around right down to modern day. So in fact, the original ancient ones and the Asgard gods and where we're at today, they're all just reincarnations of the same people, centuries, decades, millennia apart. And we're all continued through our bloodline, which is why I personally love Assassin's Creed in the first place. The thought and process of that. Richie, you're the same as your dad in some way, shape, and form, whether it's your mannerisms, your facial structure, your hair,
it's
your
in the
personality.
DNA. It's like your DNA. The whole big concept is that your DNA has memories, and that's the whole founding thing of the Animus, where they find a way to unlock the memories of your DNA.
Yeah, and I think it's wonderful. Like, again, you have similar traits to your family and your grandparents and their grandparents and so on and so on. If we could unlock the potential to view their memories, because again, our memories are just synapses and cells that share data, essentially. So if we could break that down, it's very sci-fi.
So when you're drinking the witch's potion as Eivor, you're going back in time to her existence as Odin. Obviously, Sigurd, the Order of the Ancients, go the other way and just brutalize Sigurd to get him to have the same sort of effect to make their ends. But then you actually find this weird contraption that was put there by the Isu, like the actual gods.
The original, OG massive ones that have been through all Assassin's Creed. But it's really the imagery of how the Animus you find that they used to use is essentially what becomes the Tree of Life for the Asgardians, which the Tree of Life, everyone knows the Tree of Life, it breeds all life. Yggdrasil, So, and now how the mechanisms of the ancient one's tech is essentially the Tree of Life, which then in turn is the Animus in present day. And they find it under the ground, and it all ties together really nicely. But I suppose the culmination of the story is Sigurd and Eivor go to unearth this kind of thing in Norway. You find the Animus from an ancient age.
It's something that Sigurd has seen clearly. He knows exactly where it is through his time as Tyr. And basically takes you there.
And in present day, Layla too, through Eivor's memories, now knows where this location is. She gets to go there, and the kind of all the stories now cross over and come together, where Basim follows you.
Oh, it's that moment where Basim reveals himself to be Loki, but also that where Sigurd, through his trauma, figured out that he was Tyr, or figured out his god. Eivor doesn't really fully grasp the whole situation.
He doesn't understand why he's a god, but he starts to understand in the end that these visions are more just dreams. Yeah,
you start understanding that actually, no, maybe I am descending from Odin, where Basim seems pretty clear that he is actually Loki.
Yeah, he has quite a clear understanding.
So do you think Basim is a reincarnation, or is just actually Loki? Because I kind of read, because with such clarity.
Yeah, so I've never really considered that, but you're right. Yeah, he hasn't had to have dreams and stuff. He's always been playing the trickster, the prankster. Yeah. And even, I suppose, if we fast forward to the end of the story, Loki wasn't supposed to be in the Animus, but he gets there in the Asgardian time.
That's during your fight with Basim at the end. You actually end up trapping him in the Animus. Well, the Isu version of the Animus. So
there needs a different name.
Yeah.
But no, so Basim follows you as Eivor. You have your big fight with Sigurd and such, and then the machine essentially drags him into the Animus, and he gets frozen in time essentially until then. In modern day time, Layla finds the Animus. She goes into it, and by proxy, Basim is kind of reborn. He gets the staff of he's the Greek guy. You didn't play Odyssey to the end, so you won't even know. It's Hephaestus or something like that.
I know what you mean.
It's the medical symbol with the snake wrapped around the wings that you see on all medical.
It's the one that Cassandra has at the end.
Yeah, she gets that, and it gives you eternal life, essentially.
Yeah, so Basim is alive in Monday, which is even interesting. Layla's now trapped in the Animus, and Basim returns to the assassin. The modern assassins. But it's weird because he was an assassin, but he's also the main antagonist, so it's such
a clever
twist on the story. It's such a good ending. It's like,
and Layla is stuck in the Animus, and we get a great cameo because within the Animus, which is all like the Matrix, it's all like the DNA of every possible history and future outcome. Yeah, she's now stuck there, and she has to read through essentially all the coding and figure out what the best course of action is for the future. Yeah. And in there, she meets one Desmond Miles, aka Nolan North, who reprises his voice role, who is trapped in the Animus because we know from previous Assassin's Creed, Desmond's no longer with us. He sacrificed himself. But he's not dead. He's just stuck in this matrix, essentially rereading all the code of how the future might lay out, how humanity will end, essentially. And it's a nice tying together of all story threads, essentially, into this present day where now Basim is alive again, and he has an agenda. He has a creepy agenda, certainly.
But we don't know what his agenda is because his whole thing was he wanted to take revenge on Odin, and he kind of has. He's achieved that basically by trapping Layla in the Animus. He's
outlived Odin, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's now basically free. So it'd be interesting to see where he goes, where the character goes from here, because
I suppose in within the Asgard timeline as well, Ragnarok happens. Yeah. You see everyone gets destroyed, and they all jump into the Animus, which essentially allows them to be reborn in the future.
Yeah.
And do you presume they're all locked in the Animus then? Oh no, because they all lock into the Animus with their DNA, then they all go out to die in Ragnarok, don't they?
It's Yggdrasil, it's the tree of life. So I'm guessing they perish, but their souls get reincarnated into
their DNA is in the tree of life
over and over and over through history. So it's possibly even people like Cassandra is really linked back to Odin.
Yeah, they could all be. You could be Richie.
Because you have to remember, Cassandra is a distant relative of Eivor. What's her name?
The Greek guy.
No, the main character.
On Odyssey.
No, the modern day person he plays. What's her name?
Layla Hassan.
Layla, because Cassandra's or Alexis, depending.
She because
it's the same
memories,
genealogy. So it's
because we all are at the end of the day. Humans, remember, all derived from going back in time. We all come from the same DNA. So me and you, Richie, will be related millennia back potentially.
Probably not even that far above from the North East.
No, it probably isn't that far. Yeah,
there'd be quite a few generations, but in terms of the history of our species, not much.
Yeah, eventually, if you go back far enough, it's all incest.
But I think, the more we've been talking about it now, the more excited I am to see where they take the law in the next game, because it almost feels like such a good setup.
I mean, we have Basim now, and he's Loki reincarnated for the third time, I guess, fourth time potentially. And by proxy, does that mean Basim's one of the ancient ones?
Well, this is what I'm thinking. It's like if we assume that he is actually Loki and not reincarnated Loki, theoretically he should have all the same powers and abilities that he had back on Asgard
as a god
in the modern day.
Yeah.
Or even if he is more still just like a human, he still has all that knowledge and experience of effectively living through 3 lifetimes.
Yeah.
He lived as Loki, he lived as Basim, and now. Well, the interesting is Sean and Rebecca, the other 2 Assassins people, don't know that Layla's trapped, and they
just think she's
they don't
lost
know
somewhere.
Who Basim is really. They know bits about him,
but they know he's definitely not from today.
They know he's not from today, but they don't know that he's Loki. They don't know not to trust him.
Is Basim talking to someone as well? I always feel like he references when he's talking, I know he goes and sees Eivor's grave and he's like, haha, I've outlived you. But I feel like there's someone else who he's in cohorts with. I always feel like it's not just him on his own. He's got a bigger plan in conjunction with somebody else. I always get the vibe that there's another character we don't know yet. Who he's like, what is his intention now?
I
don't
know.
Want to get back to the Order, or because obviously they're trying to hunt down Desmond's dad, who's in charge of the assassins.
My major, one of the biggest influences I know for the character of Loki is obviously the MCU. And if you think back to Loki, who in like 4 and in Avengers 1, he's kind of manipulating things to get himself on top. And I wonder if Bassam's in the same situation.
Yeah, he wants to be in charge of the assassins or the Templars, potentially.
He couldn't, I'd say bigger than that, in charge of the world. Like, really, really big. He couldn't manage it as Loki. He couldn't manage it as Bassam during like Evor's time.
Yeah.
Because ultimately he ended up trapping him. But now is he going to go about this same ambition?
Potentially. But it's an interesting way to take it, because with all these Assassin's Creed games, they only ever give us snippets of the ones that came before, or the ancient ones. Like you collect these fragments, Richie, throughout the game, where you get like these little side puzzles. Yeah. Where you've got to scale and climb and move mirror lights, and they kind of got annoying after a while, if I'm honest. Like I enjoyed a couple, but then
it was just platforming challenges.
And you get from that, you get like a 3-second snippet of what happened back in the day. And Assassin's Creed games have always done this, and it was always intriguing, but I always felt like it was leading towards a game featuring all of them, and it never has. Here we are a decade later, and we've only still got sprinkles of what the hell the ancient ones were. It's
just a side mission while giving a bit more of a lore dump. So I think we'll round this off by saying, where would you want the next Assassin's Creed game to take place?
Somewhere that doesn't involve horses. No, probably. They just need to sort the horse mechanics.
Just have better horses.
Yeah, because we said on the podcast a couple of times and post shows that there's certain mechanics in the game. Like the game itself is fun and great, but there are stuff that could have been a lot more polished off. Yeah. In terms of the game, I don't kind of really know. I would love, in all honesty, I know there's rumors of like feudal Japan, which I kind of feel like Ghost of Tsushima's had my fix from that. But then I also don't feel like this story can carry over to Japan that much without having to uproot all of the history they've got before. Because let's face it, traditionally Egyptian and then by proxy Roman mythology and then Greek and Norse, it does influence our culture today, and it's very heavily influenced like generation upon generation. Yeah. I feel like Japan is a totally separate world to the Western world we live in now.
Yeah, the cultures, the history, of like the Far East and like Europe are not that well intertwined. But I think these could be influences like with like things like the shogunate and like you got like ninjas and the samurai and stuff that you could transcribe the Order of Ancients and the Hidden Ones or whatever they're calling them in the next game. The Assassins
let's face it, the bad guys, obviously, the Chinese dynasty and the Mongol invasions, like all of that, and the emperors in China and Japan, like all of that kind of stuff can definitely be folded into this Assassin's Creed world. But from where we've left this story right now, after having
this is where I'm at. Is like I would have traditionally been in the ancient the feudal Japan, like this probably the Sengoku period, like where there's warring states. I think there's such a good game you could tell in there. But I also want to follow up on Bassam's story. I'm always hoping, is Bassam going to be the new modern day protagonist? Because that would be an interesting twist.
Yeah, what I would personally like, just echoing what I've said there, but like I said, Egyptian, and then obviously a lot of Egyptian was inspired by Rome. A lot of people don't realize like the Roman Empire was around same time as the Egyptians pretty much hit their height.
Yeah, it's like Caesar and Cleopatra knew each other.
They were best mates, or more maybe. We do. But in terms of that, like everything, like again, we said here, the Roman Empire expanded to Britain, and that's why a lot of stuff in Valhalla is the remnants of the Roman Empire. So us as a society, we in the UK have our road system from the Romans and lots of other things. Our warm water and central heating, I kind of guess, and other things. Plumbing, but then, we've obviously got the massive Norse influence from the Viking Saxons and stuff in the invasion back then. Like we said before, Jorvik and York is so heavily influenced, and that's only down the road from us. Yeah. And then, Greek mythology, we all use Greek in the English language, mathematics, all of that comes from the ancient Greek. So we're so heavily influenced by that. I personally, with Bassam's story, Assassin's Creed in general, this I feel like would be a great chance to pivot back to Italy and Rome.
Yeah, I was
and
actually
really tie it all in.
I was actually thinking that. The one thing is now shining the light on is I think Odyssey is like the one that doesn't fit very well. Because with Origins being basically the founding of the Assassins.
Yeah.
And then you got now the modern day stuff linking back to like Basim as a character and stuff. Honestly, I just don't really know where it fits. Like,
yeah,
because it like there was artifacts of Eden and stuff involved.
Yeah. I'm very curious to know within Ubisoft where their mind goes to. Are they picking it for the location because they know they can do a great open world game in sun-baked Greece?
It's got to be both. Like they'll commit to exploring like the history, like a fictionalized history of different places from time to time. Yeah, I do still want an Assassin's Creed game in feudal Japan because I think they could be.
Yeah, but is it the next right move? Because I think so close to Ghost of Tsushima now, especially, it's like, ooh, has that not just been already done to such a great standard?
Yeah, that's the thing. You're going to be compared to Ghost of Tsushima, but I think they're very 100%. Different. I think they're very different games.
They are, but from a marketing average player point of view, they're going to look at that and go, didn't that come out last year? It's like, oh, no, that was a different game.
Assassin's Creed can go into a bit more the folklore of Japan as well as just the history.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But I again, personally, I think it's been a long time since we saw Ezio and Italy.
Yeah,
I think it would be nice for the franchise to return to its roots, but it'd be
nice it'd be that nice style. Connective tissue between the old style and the new style. Where if it's another half step towards a traditional Assassin's Creed game, but now maybe you're Basim and you're working out of Italy, exploring your Basim's history with the Assassins.
Well, that's it. This is probably the first time, I guess, we could use Basim's DNA, and Basim was there at the time. So it's not, you're not going in and playing as someone else. You could actually play as Basim in Italy.
Yeah.
And you could maybe meet Sigurd and see what adventures you had with Sigurd.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's it. Maybe that's the ending of the... It almost feels like a prequel to Valhalla, actually, where Basim meets Sigurd in Italy, and that's probably... And they sail back to Norway, and that's the end of their story. The end of the next game. But I don't think Assassin's Creed, they don't link them that strongly.
No, they don't. It's a bit disappointing in that way that there's never really... Like arguments aside, why have we not had an Origins 2, an Odyssey 2? Because personally, we know Cassandra doesn't die at the end of it. She's got a full millennia to live outside of that.
She just hangs around in Atlantis.
Well, exactly.
And somehow she gets a nice sharp suit at some point.
Yeah, and you were saying there, but Origins with the assassins kind of being founded at the very end of that game with Bayek and his wife.
Yeah.
And then they meet Julius Caesar. Why is there not a follow-up to that Origins 2? Why the Ubisoft have such a thing where it needs to be somewhere new, it needs to be somewhere fresh. It's like, yet Origins, Odyssey, and now Valhalla have all been applauded as great games, yet they never make sequels.
It's interesting because with Assassin's Creed 1, the Order of Assassins already kind of exists, and it's fine. Assassin's Creed 2, Ezio's story, is kind of almost a return to form for the Assassins. Like, they exist, but they're smaller in numbers, and Ezio kind of is such a driving force to grow them, especially in Brotherhood. And then now you have in Valhalla, where, again, you count the Assassins when they're already kind of no longer a thing, and you've grown them again.
Yeah.
Well, kind of, because Eivor was never really a member of the Order.
That wasn't his intention, but subsequently he's wiped out the enemy. So I'm sure.
But
Hytham still exists. Yeah, he's still there to bring over now.
So you've reestablished you've reestablished the Order. So it'd be almost like I'd almost like to see the decline of the Assassins.
Well, actually, funny enough, Richie, because Hytham obviously can establish the Order in England now. We already have Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
Yeah.
Which is in England, and the Assassin's Order once again is diminished, and the Templars rule London.
Yeah, but I was thinking we could, via Basim, go back to Rome after Ezio's time, and Basim could be integral to the fall of the Assassins. So
I like that.
While infiltrating as an assassin, he's actually working, not necessarily, he's almost playing like both sides.
Yeah.
I could see him, rather than he's not allied with the Templars, he's not allied with the Assassins, he's using both sides to get where he wants.
Imagine if they could link it all in to a point where, like, Basim calls for Ezio's family to be killed.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And it's like, oh, you bastard.
Yeah, I don't know whether I'd want to say it before Ezio's time or after.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Again, with DNA and history, the chances are endless. Like, reality is they could just go back and do Ezio in a different time of his life.
Yeah.
Because it's his DNA, so you can jump back to any single time.
I don't really want to revisit Ezio as a main character. It'd be interesting, like, almost as to use him as an Easter egg. Like, if you're going to before his time for the Assassins, and, like, Basim encounters a young Ezio or something.
Yeah, something like that. But, I mean, where else is in the world aside from Japan? Like, I'd love to see them do China as well. I'm a big fan of the Dynasty Warriors series, and there's a lot of Chinese history there to do. But obviously, you need somewhere that's got history to do it.
Yeah.
Like, they tried to do American history in Assassin's Creed 3, and, like, that game wasn't well received that much. And the history was very much based on just trying to get established within the United States. You've got South America? Is there much going on there in terms of history? And
I mean, with
that
the
you can actually make a cohesive
with things like the Mayans and the Aztec, that'd be a very interesting way of exploring the Isu.
Mm-hmm.
Because they would have been around closer to the time when the Isu maybe were about. So you're going really far back. That could.
There's lots of stuff potentially, but again, the rumours feudal Japan.
Yeah, but, feudal Japan will work. Feudal China will also work.
I mean, anywhere in Europe, to be fair, they could explore. We've seen Assassin's Creed have the side-scrolling games that explored Russia and China, but they were just like 2D platformers. Yeah. So not like a fully fleshed game, but they're definitely not going to let the franchise sit and rest because it makes them so much money, and it's essentially arguably Ubisoft's biggest game.
You could even do Spain and set around like the Spanish Inquisition. Yeah,
you could. So that would tie back in with Templars and stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. If like the Templars have taken over like the Catholic Church, which they did in
or they might just go for a full-on remake. We said in their last press release for their earnings call that they were looking at the back catalogue and, quite frankly, taking Assassin's Creed 1 and really doubling down on maybe fleshing that out into an RPG and making Altair's story more cemented in the refreshed story.
That'd be cool if they somehow tied Basim and Altair together.
Yeah. So
maybe if they just knew each other or something.
Yeah. Any other points of the gameplay mechanics then that you enjoyed, didn't enjoy?
I think I was quite happy with most of it. There's obviously the things like the horse stuff was crap. It has fishing in it, which is just a waste of time in most games.
The animations, the cutscene animations.
I felt there was a lot of stuff in there that just wasn't necessary. Like a lot of the runes, I felt like I was just getting runes just to purely sell them. And I know you could upgrade stuff like runes, but I didn't feel any real need.
Yeah. I tell you what was kind of flip-flop for me from Odyssey was the armor. Whenever you collected armor in Odyssey, I always jumped in and was like, oh, do I like this? Do I prefer this? Yeah. Whereas with Valhalla, the cosmetic side of it was very much locked into, if you wanted the good armor, you had to wear the good armor. And it was like, so if something looks stupid, I wouldn't wear it because it looks stupid.
They stripped back the armor in terms of loot, where basically you'd only collect armor sets. And each armor set was kind of linked to a specific play style.
Yeah.
And that was kind of it. Which is kind of nice, to be honest, because then you're not just lugging around junk for the sake of lugging around junk.
True. Yeah, this kind of peeled that back. What did you think about the skill tree? Because I quite frankly couldn't give a toss about what the hell was going on with like the constellations, and you couldn't see where you were. It's a skill tree, and you couldn't see what skills you were really.
Yeah, what you're after.
It just kind of spiraled off into a random constellation, and then you hit a dead end, and it was like,
I didn't mind it. I kind of liked the way how you leveled up quite a lot, so you had lots of things to spend. But I was kind of with you. I kind of pretty much spent the first like half the game unlocking the entire skill tree map, and then reset and just plan my route a bit more.
I didn't feel like after the initial thing, I didn't really learn anything new. It just became about incremental, like, oh, you've got +1 arrow attack now, +4 armor. And it was
it came more about planning your route to the next cool ability that you wanted.
Yeah, but
But yeah, it was fine. I didn't.
The skill tree should have been the tree of Yggdrasil.
Yeah.
And it should have had like just start off at the roots and work your way up.
Yeah.
Towards unlocking skills.
I almost think a Skyrim style skill tree would have worked quite. So you had like lots of different mini trees that you could pick and choose which one you wanted to go down.
And I guess I mentioned it pre-show as well, but the Order of the Ancients, I mopped up all of them. I killed them all. And it turns out the leader of the Order of the Ancients is in fact King Alfred, who you meet in the main campaign. And you don't kill him. He's basically just exiled himself from England after you've defeated all the regions and you've taken ownership of the country. Your Raven clan's thriving and doing well. And yeah, you basically catch up with him. And it turns out he's leader of the Order of the Ancients, but he's a good guy in a way because he inherited being the leader of the Order of the Ancients from his father. He didn't want to do it. He knows that they were bad people. And that's why he assisted Avon in a way of bringing them down. But then in turn, because he's obviously been exiled from his own part of the country, he's no longer the king. He basically just lives on a farm and milks cows and makes bread for this woman, and you let him live, and he gives you the coin at the end and goes, yeah, you've defeated us all. Well done. You've cleared the country of the Order of the Ancients. And I tried to kill him because he's a bastard. I tried to shoot an arrow through his head, but the game didn't let me. And that's it. He's just done.
Yeah, so, kind of, when you told me that he was like the head of the Order of the Ancients, I was kind of disappointed because it's obvious. Like I felt it was kind of obvious because you ran out of like major antagonists at that point.
Yeah, there was no one left other than him.
Yeah, he's the only like major antagonist that you don't kill throughout the course of the series, or don't have the option to kill. It would have almost been a nice twist if it was like maybe Ramvi or someone.
Yeah, like, someone close. Like she's been plotting the whole time.
But there again, considering I took the Order of the Ancients to be well, maybe the true ending. It's kind of after,
give or take.
Yeah, after you've like completed all the regions and you're like instigated as Jarl with Sigurd's blessing.
Yeah, definitely.
It kind of felt like it was just busy work to mop them up rather than. It felt like the main driving story was done, and that's when I kind of dropped off. I didn't feel like there was much purpose to it.
Ubisoft understand, I think, that there's a very small percentage probably who do actually play the game to that entirety. And they've probably looked at the statistics and they know how not everybody's going to get to that point of completion where they're even going to reach that. So maybe they leave the main antagonist in the main story, probably rightly so. And this is just kind of a B-list thing you can do.
I'd almost wish they would maybe not necessarily have to destroy the entire order, but have like the main head of the order integrated more into the story.
Yeah, it's kind of, you can do one without the other, but it could be more integral.
I mean, I don't think we've mentioned it by name, but the person who tortured Sigurd, Fulke, was kind of the main connective tissue between all the ancient stuff and the rest of the story. But once her story arc's done, it's kind of all of the ancient stuff is more side stuff rather than fully integrated at that point.
Yeah, she could have been the leader of the Order. But then again, her introduction was a bit like kind of randomly quick.
Yeah. As
well. And but the way it all links in, the story was what it was. The mysteries, there's some interesting stories throughout. Did any particular mysteries come to mind, Richie? I remember the baseball one. There was a guy who was a famous baseball player, and I think you helped him hit a block or something.
Did you find the guy with an axe in his head?
Yeah, I did.
You just came across a guy who's got an axe in his head. He's complaining about the headache.
Something. Can you check? And he's like, have I got a wound or something? And you're kind of like, yeah, bro, you've got like
an axe in your head,
chunk of metal. And he's like, and then you kind of take it out from him and kills him subsequently. There was some interesting stuff. None that amazing spring to line, just like mysteries and side quests.
For a franchise that's been going as long as it is, I still feel like they're refining the formula a bit. I'd like them to take
iterative,
another step back towards the traditional Assassin's Creed style gameplay, if nothing more to give it a bit more of a unique flavour, rather than just becoming another action RPG.
Well, it's the Ubisoft of Ubisoft games, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Where it's the kind of mix match of everything that people like about games. You've got your map, you've got your weapon upgrade skill tree, you've got your leveling up, you've got your side quests, you've got your main story. You've got lots of traversal and exploration. It almost feels like tick.
Yeah, he's a checklist of things you have to get in your game, and they're not as fully integrated as they could be. But having some more like missions that are a bit more focused on things like stealth, if you're going to have be a bit more assassin driven could be nice.
Well, it's like them trying to keep ship combat in there because Black Flag was so well received. They're still trying to get ship combat integrated as much as they possibly can. Where the reality is like it's not needed.
It's a good thing to have in your arsenal, but it's not necessary. I don't think we needed it in.
Every time it was trimmed down this.
It was trimmed down this time.
It was. But every time it comes to like I have to get on my boat to cross like a wide span of water, it just became a bit tedious. It wasn't enjoyable like in Black Flag where you're sailing the open seas. It was like, right, call the boat, here's the crew, awkwardly climb onto the top of it, and then awkwardly, slowly steer your ship out, put your sails up, hit the land just to get out and find like an artifact or something. It wasn't.
I've said since Black Flag, what I'd love to see them do is a spin-off Pirates Creed and take that in its own direction. You could set it in the same universe, there could be some interconnected tissue there, but it be its own thing, and then you can focus more on the ship combat, things like that. But
that's it, isn't it? The closer they get to open world, is the further away they get from the Assassin's Creed story, which is the what started the franchise off.
Yeah, that's probably my main. Kind of probably my main criticism with Valhalla, that it still feels like they're trying to juggle this being an open world action RPG, but also tell an Assassin's Creed story, and they're kind of I think they're getting very close to finding that sweet spot again, where Odyssey was very much just an action RPG. It's good for what it is, but again, I felt it was lacking some of the charm of the old Assassin's Creed games. But yeah.
So I guess the final point to talk about, Richie, then is will you be jumping into the DLC, or do you think you've had your fill?
I've had my fill. I'll probably read up on the story or watch a video or something to explain the story.
I'll probably
of the
tell
DLC,
you about it.
Or you listen to you. But I don't know.
What would you do if the DLC was Basim's story? Would that not intrigue you enough?
Possibly, actually, but it's when you're over 100 hours into a game, and I've very much moved on from it at this point. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, with me, I very rarely play DLC, because usually by the time I've cleared a game, I'm ready to move on to the next thing. And then I find it hard to go back into it if a DLC comes later. I haven't played Frozen Waste DLC for Horizon Zero Dawn. I have it, but I just struggled to get back into the game.
Yeah, no, I understand. That's what kept me with Odyssey. I always remember thinking I got Odyssey before Christmas, and then I played it through, and I think the next DLC before I'd finished Odyssey dropped in the February maybe, and then I jumped back in, and then the next DLC came out, and very, very before I realised I'd been playing Odyssey for nearly a year straight.
Yeah,
and I was kept in I never broke away from the game long enough to feel fatigued or like too far detached from it. So hopefully, if like the Wrath of the Druids or the Siege of Paris drops before March, it might be close enough for me, and I'm sure Ubisoft know the statistics in that. Like, I'll jump back in and I'll do seasonal content or something. But overall, though, what would you, if you were to give it a score then, or a rating? What would you say?
Out of 10, I think I'm probably going to go like maybe a low 8. I really enjoy my time, but there is definitely room for improvement.
Yeah, I'd say 8 as well. Took me a while to get into it after playing Odyssey quite recently. There was something about, I think it wasn't the sun-baked world of Odyssey Origins.
It's like being in England. You had enough of English weather living here.
You just have to look outside. But I appreciate the Nordic stuff. It didn't lean into maybe the god stuff as well as I would have liked. I quite enjoyed Odyssey with it having like the Minotaurs and the Medusas and the Gorgonites and stuff that kind of bring it. Whereas this was
typically
very much
do that in the DLC though, rather than
I kind of guess
the main. I think going into mythology, they went more into it probably in the main campaign than any other game.
True, yeah, very true. But it was kind of it's a dream sequence kind of thing. I think if I was to order them, I think it's I don't know if I like Origins better than Odyssey, and it's hard to tell now because I'm so detached from them all. But I think I don't. Well, it might just be my preference for Egyptian mythology over Greek over Norse.
I think that can be it. Like all three games are fairly on par. I think this is a bit more. It's a bit. I think I prefer Valhalla massively to Odyssey, but I was never a lover of Odyssey.
So I'd give it an 8 as well. Yeah, I definitely recommend playing it, and if it's in terms of value for money, if you can pick it up, I think we've said it's already been in a sale for like £37 or something. And I think even at the moment, I think Origins is like £14, Odyssey Ultimate Edition is like 20. So if you've never played any of the previous titles, I don't know why you're at the end of a Valhalla spoiler cast, but like thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. Looking forward to the DLC and what the Assassin's Creed franchise has got in store, because it is one of my favorite gaming franchises of all time. But it's been nice to break it down, Richie, for a change.
Yeah, we've went quite long.
Let us know your opinions.
Yeah, in the comments. Anyway, thank you very much for watching or listening. We've been Sounds of Stadia, and this has been our Assassin's Creed Spoilercast. Make sure you like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out all of other stuff like our Thursday night live streams, the Sounds of Stadia podcast, and some of our first looks. I've been Richie.
I've been Chris Odinson.
Yeah. Thank you very much for watching. Quest completed.
Bling.